Democrats are flexing their political muscle
Chicago!
in two cities
Hey, Milwaukee!
at the same time.
Jump around.
Are you ready?
They're doing jump around House of Pain.
With one embarrassing flub,
Former Wisconsinite. Former state. Oh my God. I was jazzed. Are you feeling okay? Oh my God.
and two jam-packed arenas. As a sitting president steps aside
We need you to beat Donald Trump.
in a race to keep a former president out of the White House.
Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
This week on Open Record,
I'm feeling fired up.
it's Democrats' turn to party.
Just like Wisconsin's state motto tells us, forward!
From the FOX6 studios, this is Open Record. I'm Bryan Polcyn, and I'm joined by Open Record's executive producer, Sarah Smith. Good morning, Sarah.
Hello.
And we are joined via Zoom from his Chicago hotel room by legendary longtime FOX6 news anchor and very tired.
Legendary.
Yeah, legendary.
What
legendary,
an
but also
intro.
probably a
It's
sleepy,
a little early for that stuff, but go on.
a
He's so
sleepy Ted
tired.
Perry. Good morning, Ted. How are you feeling this morning?
I am tired, but we've all covered these events, whether it be a Super Bowl or a Brewers playoff run or something, where you're tired, but you're excited to get back and get to that day's coverage. So, yes, am I well rested? I am not. I'm enthusiastic to bring you more coverage. I am. Yes,
Well,
and we're in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and
the third quarter. Go ahead. You're going to explain why we're taping this. It's Thursday morning.
That's right. It is Thursday morning. It is August 22nd. We're going to be releasing this same day. A lot of times we release the day after, but it is the fourth and final day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. As we record, we are still awaiting the official nomination acceptance speech of current Vice President and now Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris at the United
Can I have
Center.
a prediction about that?
Okay.
She's going to accept.
I think that's
I think she's going to accept it.
way to
Got it.
go out on a limb. We've already gotten an up close glimpse of Kamala Harris and what she's going to say here in Milwaukee, which pretty unusual and interesting. A fascinating, high energy two-city experience this week as Democrats are having their turn to rev up the party as we head into the final stretch of the 2024 campaign for the White House. We're going to get some behind-the-scenes perspective here from Ted. We're going to recap some of the week's highlights so far and look ahead to what's to come tonight and in the next 75 days. We'll do all that when we come right back. So FOX6's Ted Perry spent most of 5 days inside Fiserv Forum here in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention, and now you've spent the past 5 days in Chicago covering the Democratic National Convention. First and foremost, Ted, you've been in this business a long time, and I don't mean to say that means you're an old man. It doesn't. I'm an old man too. I mean, you've done a lot of things in your distinguished career. Never, I can imagine, have you covered in full, in person, back-to-back conventions like this. What has this been like for you?
I haven't. In fact, when we covered the RNC in July, that was my first convention. We had already always had political reporters, and we still do with Jason Calvi, who's been down here. And if you think I'm working long days, that guy just gets up and goes. And so he deserves a lot of credit, and his crew, as does Sam Kramer, who's just been amazing down here as well. But it's been really something I've wanted to cover. I mean, I'm thinking back. I grew up in a household that was very politically astute and aware, and we watched the conventions. I mean, I was 4 years old in a suburb of Chicago for the 1968 convention. I'm not going to tell you I have a memory of that, but it's kind of part of Chicago lore, that 1968 convention, Democratic convention here. And on a surface, so many similarities, right? It's 68, you had a sitting president, LBJ, with eligibility left to go, but says, I'm not going to run. You should probably pick my VP. They did that year in Hubert Humphrey amid many famous violent protests. And then you had a sitting president for the first time since then saying, I got eligibility left, but I don't want it. You should take my VP here in Chicago. The difference is LBJ didn't even show up to the convention in 1968. Joe Biden made his farewell speech on Monday night. So I was excited in 2020 to cover the DNC, which never happened. I'm grateful that I got a chance to anchor it with Stephanie Grady in Milwaukee for the RNC. I'm grateful to get the chance to be down here with Sam and Jason covering the DNC this week. So equally long weeks, equally interesting storylines developing, a lot of similarities between Milwaukee and Chicago. I watched local news here, and stop me if you've heard this one. Restaurants saying, hey, we're not getting the business we promised. Protesters saying, hey, we're not giving the proper space to view our grievances and to discuss our grievances. So many similarities between the RNC and the DNC.
Although I feel like 50,000 people coming to a city seems like a much bigger deal in Milwaukee than it does in Chicago, right? I mean, it's not any big deal for a convention to bring 50,000 people into Chicago.
No, they do it all the time. This is a city. In fact, they've hosted more political conventions than anyone else. 14 Republican conventions. Wow. This is their 12th Democratic convention. So, I mean, it goes back to 1860 was the first year this city hosted a convention. It was the Republican convention. Any idea who got nominated for the Republicans that year?
Wait, what year are you talking about?
1860.
No, I'm not gonna.
That's a pass.
If you ask something within the last 50 years, I'd be embarrassed to say.
Oh, Abraham.
Okay.
Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln
Was way off.
a young lawyer from downstate Illinois who didn't even come to the convention in 1860. So it just shows you the evolution of these get-togethers. And Lincoln had no idea he was going to be nominated and wasn't here, wasn't a delegate, didn't come up, got the word when he was down at his law office in Springfield.
Ted, if anyone knows you for any length of time, you love presidential history, things like that. I mean, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the Zoom with us and giving of your time, but you are one of the most perfect people to be covering these events. And so obviously we had a suite at Pfizer Forum for the RNC. Things are looking a little bit different because, I mean, on a positive note, like the Chicago trip is close. The DNC is in our backyard. And so what does it look like inside the United Center this time around for us?
What are your digs there?
Yeah.
Well, when we were the host city, we had that beautiful suite, and shout out to Chief Photographer Cale Zimney and Jeff Frings for what they did. I mean, if you saw that in our suite and you put it up against any network, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, nobody looked better than we did. It was
we looked sharp. It definitely was network.
But like, let's let the viewers in on a little secret. They don't just give you those spots.
What?
Right? They cost money, and there are budgets to consider. And so in Chicago, we don't have the backdrop of the floor. We're probably about 100 feet from the entrance into the aisles going in, right? But they have those screened off. And so by the time the sound reaches us where we're broadcasting, it's a little muffled. So you can occasionally hear a roar if somebody nails a really good line, but we're not as close. And that's fine because it's not in our backyard as the RNC was. So we're getting coverage. We're getting the access for the most part that we want. And we're in an area called, Media Row, Radio Row, whatever you want to call it. And so a lot of people are walking by. So it makes it a little bit easier to grab interviews. For example, the actor Mandy Patinkin was a booth over yesterday, and I grabbed him for a quick interview. So
yeah, Jenna Sachs, by the way, Jenna Sachs was in our office yesterday, and she goes, Ted's getting better celebrity interviews than we got. We had Dean Cain, which was fine. It's a nice interview. It was actually, he was very good. It was a very good interview. She's like, she was jealous of Mandy Patinkin.
Yeah, well, he was really lovely and a really passionate guy, and says he's going to come to Wisconsin to campaign for the Harris Walls ticket. So if Mandy Patinkin knocks on your door, you should probably answer because he's going to give you some interesting things.
Did you recognize him? I'm always worried that I would never recognize celebrities in real life.
There's no mistaking Mandy Patinkin's voice. In fact, I was walking. I heard him before I saw him.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
He's got that beautiful voice. I mean, he's a classically trained singer. He went to Juilliard, for crying out loud. He's a Chicago native. And I heard him say, that's not what you put on a hot dog. And I looked, I know that voice. And there he was doing an interview with some radio station. And I just sort of waited. I went and I grabbed one of our photographers, Colin. I said, "Do you have a few minutes? We're going to try to get Mandy Patinkin." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And we waited, and his handler came over and she said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, we just don't have time. He's got to get to the floor." And I said, "Well, he's going to walk to the floor, right? Can I walk with him?"
Yeah.
And we were walking and talking. And every time I asked him a question, he's so passionate, he would stop and give the answer. And I said, "Mandy, the deal was we walk and talk, or else your handler's going to come grab you away from me."
Yeah.
So, but he was very passionate and a very genuine guy. And I appreciated the time that he was able to give us.
So,
which, by the way, you can see that whole interview on fox6now.com.
Love the plug. That's fantastic. We are day 4 as we talk. We're recording in the morning of day 4, but a lot has happened. Obviously, a lot of speeches. But let's go back to night 1, because I think it's what, as you mentioned, you referenced, goes back to 1968, the last time a sitting president with eligibility said, "I'm going to step aside and let my vice president run for the White House." Joe Biden, though, appears after, obviously, there's all the behind-the-scenes talk of what really happened and was he shoved out? Did Nancy Pelosi orchestrate this? All these things. In the end, he shows up and he delivers a speech in support of Kamala Harris. What was that speech like? Surprising that he or any of us were still awake when it finally happened.
So long.
But tell me about what the crowd's reaction was to that speech and the sort of awkwardness of the situation. He seemed to get past that.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to be really honest with you and the viewers here and the listeners. I wasn't in the arena for that. Okay. And I'll get to that in a second as to why. I'll get to it now. We only have one floor pass, right? And that's obviously it's got to go to Jason Calvi. He's got to be down on the floor with the delegates. So the way FISERV, and it's a newer arena, a much newer arena than the United Center. So I'm not blaming the United Center architects. But the way FISERV, it's open, right? You can be seeing the game from the concourse or up on the upper levels.
Yeah.
You can look down and you can get a feel of what it's like to be in the room. You don't have that here. It's an older building. The concourses, think of the difference between Old County Stadium and Miller Park, right? Or I'm sorry, American Family Field. Old habits die hard. Wherever you are, you can kind of catch some of the game when you're out at American Family Field. You couldn't do that at County Stadium. So, and they don't let you just pop in to get a feel for it. So I'm watching President Biden's speech on a monitor about 100 feet away from the opening of the aisles, right? So I'm not getting that full in the room feeling. I know that it started an hour and 7 minutes later than it was supposed to. It was supposed to start at 9:20. He didn't start till almost 10:30. And he didn't finish until after midnight on the East Coast, where half of the population of this country lives. So there's a lot of criticism of the DNC for letting the train go off the tracks timing-wise early on that, and they really got it together for night 2. Lost it a little bit on the on the third night, Wednesday night, and you can chalk that up to Oprah Winfrey, who was not on the
surprise,
list.
right?
List every
Yeah.
afternoon. Right?
Not only was she a surprise, she took her time, I would say.
She did take her time. Who among us is going to say, Oprah?
Please,
I mean,
wrap
one
up.
thing to wrap me, right? I mean, Smitty, you've been a producer in the booth. You're
I'm not cutting her mic. Yeah.
Rap. Yeah,
Nope.
it's not going to happen.
You
So
just start dropping weather.
Stedman might have told her to rap.
They didn't get on terribly late last night, but Tim Walz was a little later than they expected. So it'll be interesting to see how they correct that tonight, because, I mean, this is the most important speech of Vice President Harris's life. And so they better do their best to get it in prime time.
All right,
they did not do that for Joe Biden. I'll just say I think they did him a little dirty by having him go on so late.
I have a lot of things. I often over prepare for these kinds of things, and we could probably probably could talk for 3 hours. But I want to take a break. When we come back, I do want to talk about Tim Walz's speech last night. And before we even start to get into that, let's take a break. We'll do that when we come right back. Night 3. Once again, things get a little long, and Tim Walz, his chance to introduce himself to the nation in prime time gets pushed a little past prime time. But when he finally got on stage, they talk about comedians. They say, "Can you do a tight 10? Can you do a tight?" He did a tight 16. Of all the speeches, Tim Walz seemed tight, and it was delivered with energy, and then it was over. So for all the wait, he was probably one of the tightest speeches of the night in terms of pace. What I don't know if you were again outside because Jason's on the floor, but overall reaction that you heard, that you saw, what did you observe out of the Tim Walz speech?
Well, where we were stationed, it's near an exit, right? So on the first night, just for example, as the speech started late for President Biden and it went a little long, okay, that's on him. People came out in dribs and drabs through the exit doors holding their I Love Joe sign. And I thought it was ironic. They're holding an I Love Joe sign, but not enough to stick around for his final big time speech. Right. And then Tuesday night with President Obama, they came, when it was over, they came flooding out, and there was this sense of euphoria and electricity that was not there the night before. But again, it was there last night because we're on air when that speech ends. That speech ends, Fox hands it back to us, and boom, we're on the air 60 seconds later. So then I start seeing the stream of people behind, and get a chance when I throw it to Jason to get a few quick reactions from people, describe to me in a word or two what, and so I'm getting reaction as we're on the air. You're not seeing that because Jason is talking or Sam Kramer is talking about their assignment for that night. And so there was a real sense of, wow, he did what they needed him to do. People told me, I talked to two women from Georgia, delegates, one who was born in Milwaukee, who said, I identify with him because I'm coach and I'm an educator. But to me, it was the most emotional speech of the week. And this is a woman who did not look to be older than 40, a woman of color from Georgia. And she said, I really identified with this guy from Minnesota, this 60-year-old guy from Minnesota. And her friend said, I knew nothing about him. I'm here because I'm supporting Kamala Harris. And she said, after I heard his speech, I feel like I know him and I feel like he was a good pick. She goes, I didn't have an opinion before I saw him. So if that's your litmus test, then Tim Walz gave a pretty successful halftime speech. And it was short because he's a coach. Half times are 12 minutes. You got to say what you got to say in that time and get back on the field.
He did call. He said he's good at pep talks. This almost felt like more of a pep talk than a speech,
but
right?
It still had the touches of emotion too. So it was like all packed. It was like a package kind of thing where you got a little bit of the emotion, a little bit of the pep rally, the coach talk, and then by the end, you know, people were feeling like, yeah, we're on this team. So
I described it as half pep talk, half get to know me.
In terms of emotion, I remember going back to the RNC, and when J.D. Vance gave his acceptance speech, it's not like that was a super emotional speech, but there was one moment where he has his mother in the crowd, and anyone who read Hillbilly Elegy or has seen the movie knows the role his mother played in his life, and she wasn't always the hero by any means. Struggled with addiction. He mentions she's 10 years sober. I think it was 10 years sober. Significant number of times she's been sober. She's in the audience. They pan to her or you know, a cut to her. And she has, through quivering lips, says, that's my boy. And it seemed like that was probably the most emotional moment of that night, was that mother-son moment. Last night with Tim Walz, he gets up on stage. He starts delivering this rousing coach speech, and there's a cut to his family and his son Gus, who seems to have won over a good part of America, emotional through tears, says, that's my dad. Was that the moment of the night?
I think it had to be, right? Because even though you didn't have to have the volume up. We did have the volume up so I could hear what he was saying, and there's closed captioning. And then you see that, and through tears, and Gus is 17 years old. He's neurodivergent. And he has some learning disabilities, according to his mother. And to see the tears rushing down, that's my dad with that sense of pride. I don't care what your politics are. I mean, you have to, as a human, see that connection. And it was a pretty beautiful moment, like it was for J.D. Vance's mom to say, that's my boy.
In terms of the content, and I, you know, this is, whether it's the Republican National Convention for Donald Trump shortly after an assassination attempt, or it is the Democratic National Convention where we've known it's going to be Kamala Harris leading up to this. These are, in a large part, they are pep rallies, right? These are, let's get everybody fired up. It's not as though they are standing in front of cameras or standing in front of journalists who are asking challenging questions. And that's been one of the things, one of the early knocks on Kamala Harris is, since it's become clear she's going to be the nominee, she hasn't sat down for that interview. to answer those adversarial questions. She will have to between now and November. But in the meantime, policy. What are we hearing in terms of policy? Other than the rah-rah pep stuff, what are we hearing in terms of policy here at the DNC?
Not a lot. I mean, not a lot. There's not specifics. There's promises of lower drug prices, and there's already been evidence of that. You're hearing better education, better handling of prescription drug, or not prescription drug, but fentanyl issues. So you're hearing, but unlike any convention, it is short on specifics by design. You don't want to be locked into what you're saying right there. And so I think all conventions lack specificity. It's early specificity. Thank you. Take three. So it's
you got that faster than you got that faster than President Biden got electoral over electrical. That was a moment. Anyway, so
yeah,
stepping aside,
he was up late and I was up late, so we both get a little slack cut to us for that, I hope. You're not going to. It's not necessarily about policy. You don't want to stand in front of 15,000 people and say, all right, here's exactly what we're going to do on this and this and this. Then it gets wonky instead of inspirational and aspirational.
I was thinking about some of the moments this week. I mean, it has been, I think probably largely Democrats would say this has been a very successful convention. The energy has been high. And there was a moment, though, for an embarrassing moment in particular for Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers as he is going through the ceremonial roll call. They've already done the official roll call, but this is the ceremonial roll call, and they go to Wisconsin and they start with jump around, and there's this energy, and he says he's, can I say it? Can I use? He says he's jazzed as hell. He's jazzed as hell.
Jazzed as hell.
He says he's jazzed as hell. But then when he goes to announce who the electoral votes are going for, he freezes up. Tell me a little bit about that moment, Ted.
Again, we were watching on a monitor in the atrium of the United Center, not far from the Michael Jordan statue.
Hey.
And which is, by the way, the most photographed thing in the United Center.
Oh, I bet.
You just, anytime we walk over there's a group of people posing in front of the Jordan statue. I thought he was pausing for dramatic effect. I thought he was almost trying to be funny, as if we cast our votes for, like there was going to be some suspense. There's no suspense. There's 4,700 delegates. 99.99% of them cast their votes already virtually 2 weeks ago for Kamala Harris. 3 weeks ago for Kamala Harris. They did that so that it was certain that she would be on the ballot in all states, including very key Ohio. And then I realized, oh no, he's not pausing for dramatic effect. No disrespect to Tony Evers, he doesn't have that flair, right? He doesn't have that sense of drama. Then we realized he was struggling. Did he forget her name? Could he not get it out? And we immediately, I knew people who were in that delegation. I knew politicians in that delegation. I started texting, what's wrong? What happened? I saw County Executive David Crowley in the hallway afterward. And I said, I'm sorry, I got to ask you first off about Tony Evers. And he said, he was nervous. He admits he was nervous. He's fine. There's nothing more to it. It wasn't a medical issue. We didn't go to a pre-party. It was just him being nervous.
Yeah, I mean, people do start speculating things like, were a couple too many old fashions? What was it?
Social media. Well, if you look at social media 10 minutes after that, it was brutal.
Roasted.
It was brutal. People were speculating and, having all sorts of, and some of the lines were pretty funny. But if I were Tony Evers, I would have stayed off social media for that night.
And to Jason Kelvy's credit, he got a word with the governor after that, right?
Said, are you okay? See, I'm okay. Get out of here. Yeah, that's fine. He tried to play it down a little bit, but you know what? I'm sure he wants a mulligan on that one, but you don't get it. You get that one moment. I'm not sure why they didn't spread the wealth like some people did. I'm not sure. Tony Evers is the governor of the state. He's been elected twice. He's got the right to do that. I'm not saying it was a bad pick, but some states would pass the mic to show a little more diversity, whether it be in race or in with transgender people taking the microphone, as they did in New Jersey. There's a candidate running for office there who was handed the mic by the governor of New Jersey. And so I think people tried to show their diversity a little bit more. I'm not sure why they decided it would be one person and one person only, but that's a decision that I wasn't privy to, and no one asked my opinion.
Do you think Jump Around was the correct song to pick for Wisconsin?
Oh yeah, given the energy of the night.
Yeah.
I think, I saw a lot of things on social media, people saying Jump Around's played, everyone has that song play. No, not everyone does. It's something that the Badger football team in the mid 2000s made their own song from House of Pain. Every fourth quarter starts with that song. And so it's kind of been, I should say, the unofficial state motto there. I mean, would I have loved on Wisconsin? Yeah, but it didn't fit the moment. The moment was about hype and energy. And I mean, I love Roll Out the Barrel during the seventh inning of Brewers games, but that's not going to do it either. So
I got to tell you, Ted, what I enjoyed watching some of the raw video of the recording. So we have all these feeds coming into the station throughout this, and one of them is the feed where you are, and watching the behind the scenes of, like, there's not a lot of breaking news at these political conventions, right? We have the list of speakers, we know what's coming up, so there's not a lot of break. But behind the scenes, you're going, hey guys, can you just come back to me for a minute, because I've just gotten word from Jason Kelvey. They're going to do Jump Around. And I loved, like, the sort of breaking, like, you got to come back to me for a minute because I got to break this news. It was fantastic to watch as you were trying to convince them, you got to come back to me for a minute because we got to tell people this.
Yeah. And I tried to give Ben and Steph a hint by jumping up and down. I'm like, I know the song.
Which is a clip Steph, we're going to save.
Oh, great. Please. I did you the courtesy of getting up early and being on your show. Don't show. I'm begging you not to show the clip.
All right. We won't show the clip here, Dave.
At least not in
Dave gets to decide that because Dave edits this afterwards.
Dave's going to speed it up and
Dave said
he can't hear anything. He's you asked him to turn his stuff
selective hearing on that.
All right. We are going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk about one of the most, I think, remarkable things about this week, which was, unlike any other convention I've seen, this is a Chicago convention, and yet the nominee, the moment the ceremonial roll call is done, gives a speech not in Chicago, but in Milwaukee. And we're going to talk about that when we come right back. So this is a Chicago convention, the Democratic National Convention. Republicans got their turn in Milwaukee. Wisconsin, a battleground state. Illinois, not a battleground state, but it's the host of the convention. And the second night of the convention, Tuesday, the ceremonial roll call takes place in the arena, and officially now she is nominated as the Democratic candidate for president. And Kamala Harris almost immediately gives a speech, but she does it at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. There's this simulcast thing going on, 2 jam-packed arenas. First of all, Ted, you're in Chicago for this thing, and there's the candidate back in your home city giving a speech. Were you feeling a little left out there?
I wasn't feeling left out. I was wondering how they were going to pull it off. And I understand how the technology of television works. But I can't imagine. FDR was twice nominated for the Democratic presidency or nomination in this city, in Chicago. I can't imagine back in 1932 them going, now we're going to tune into radio because he's in Omaha. It's just that's what modern technology can do.
Yeah.
And they pulled it off. They did pull it off. The sound was good. You could hear it. I made sure to walk the corridors to make sure people could hear it. It was interesting. Not a lot of people in the corridor were paying attention. They were out doing their own business, their own thing. So even while the vice president is speaking, and I don't know what it was like in the arena, because, again, I wasn't in there, but I can tell you what it was like in the corridors and the hallways. Not everyone was really paying attention. I just think it's really interesting. It underscores Wisconsin as a state that needs to be won. The Harris campaign has said this week that they think this whole election, think about this whole election is going to come down to 50,000 votes. And over those 7 key states, I mean, it was 21,000, right, that separated Biden and Trump in Wisconsin in 2020. So think about that, 50,000 votes out of the multiple millions of votes that are going to be cast in November. So if you have to say, sorry, Chicago, in blue Illinois, we're going to put you on hold and we're going to take this party up here. To me, the analogy I made was we've all been to weddings where, wink, wink, we know they've actually got married by the justice of peace for whatever reason. And then they have a ceremony and a dance. It was kind of like that. Like, let's get a band, let's get a cake, let's put on a dress and let's have a party. And then during that party, the bride and groom went to a country club down the road to party for a while, and then came back to the party the next day. I mean, it's just interesting how somebody thought to pull that off. And I was skeptical. I'm like, I don't know if it's going to work. But it worked.
I'm wondering, there's been all this talk about, obviously even former President Trump has criticized the Harris Walz campaign for AI videos, faking crowds. There's all been this crowd talk. And then you have a scenario where the convention's full of delegates and media. So that's almost that's not a genuine rally. But then in Milwaukee, with very little notice, they filled Fiserv Forum. It seemed like in some ways that was a flex of political muscle saying, you don't think we can get a crowd? Take a look at this.
Yeah. I mean, for all the jokes, and Obama made one about crowd size, it matters to both campaigns. They think there's a litmus test there of, how many people. But again, it's like yard signs. Yard signs, you may see a lot of them. It doesn't mean people are going to vote. It means maybe they're trying to upset their neighbors. Maybe they're just trying to say who they're. But, yard signs, political scientists will tell you that. Don't pay any attention to yard signs. They're not a true indicator. Is it a true indicator that you can get first 15,000 and then the revised estimate was 18,000 into Fiserv? Yeah, it's a tremendous show of enthusiasm. But again, none of this matters if people don't vote one way or another. Whoever you're backing, it doesn't matter. Well, it's all talk until November 5th.
Well, and I think too, I mean, the candidates, both Kamala and Donald Trump and Vance and Walz, I mean, they keep coming back to Wisconsin because they know it matters. So on the same day that Kamala Harris had her rally here, J.D. Vance was down in Kenosha. So it certainly proves that they're going to keep coming back. These aren't the last two visits that we'll have between now and November. So obviously they're showcasing that there's still work to be done to attract people to the polls.
But here's what's going to get interesting. Where are they going to keep going? Are they going to come to Milwaukee and to Madison and Eau Claire? Or are they going to go to Baraboo in Sauk County, which has been sort of a bellwether for both, like whoever wins Baraboo wins Sauk County, whoever wins Sauk County wins the state. Are they going to hit those rural areas? Are they going to go, up to Wisconsin Rapids? Are they going to go to Hayward? Because the battle, Milwaukee County is going to go blue. Dane County is going to go blue. Where are those rural counties, the Sauk counties that have been blue and have been red? Brown County, which isn't necessarily a rural county, but has been blue and has been red. Where are they going to go next? It's going to be interesting to see that fight for the rural voter and how rural they want those stops to be. Or does it not pay off because you may not get the media coverage or you may not get the crowds to come? It's going to be interesting to see what the plan is going forward.
We have a couple of times on this podcast, we've had a university professor from Dayton, Ohio, who is an expert in vice presidential politics, but also in tracking the effectiveness of things like campaign visits. He's written a book about campaign visits. And one of the things he talked to us about was whether or not candidates go to places that are friendly or whether they will go into places where maybe it's not their most likely, maybe Madison or Dane County is sure to go blue, but does it benefit Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to go into Madison instead of losing by 60, lose by 55%, because that margin could be what makes the difference. And his contention is that for either party, either campaign, to go to areas where you typically aren't successful may actually help the margins more than revving up people who are already going to come to the polls and vote for you. Does it benefit Tim Walz or Kamala Harris to come to Milwaukee and rev up a base that's already revved up for them? There is something to be said for get them off the couch. But if they're already getting off the couch, are they better off, as you're saying, going to places where they might struggle, or maybe Waukesha County, which has slipped more purple than it ever used to be?
Exactly. Or Ozaukee County, which is getting bluer than it was. I mean, we talk about those wow counties and how they have been solidly red for so long. And, Ozaukee County with Mequon is getting a little more blue. So it's all about margins. Can you shave some of those voters? Can you say, or can you convince some of them maybe to not go home because you attack their guy so much? Do I want to vote for him? Yeah, but do I want to vote for them? No. So can you play defense as well as offense at the same time?
All right, we're going to go off the record in a minute, but before we do, 2 conventions, you've been there for 2 full conventions in a row now. if you think back to a memory or two that really stands out from each that you're going to take away, you're going to go, that's the thing I'm going to remember most. What would it be?
This is going to sound corny as heck, but it's just working with the people I've been working with. I had such a great time anchoring with Stephanie Grady down there, and the crew that was down there, including our manager Brian Graham and our news director Brandis Bailey, and Jeff Brings and Kale Zimney and all these people who are down there, and just the camaraderie that forms from very long days, and you do this and you do that. I mean, take for example, and the same thing here with the smaller crew that we have here. I went over, we have two photographers that, we have three. We have Chief Photographer Kale Zimney, who's working my camera, which is a stationary camera. And then we have Colin and we have Eddie, who are working with Jason and Sam Kramer respectively. And they're already busy, but I spotted Mandy Patinkin and I came over and I said, hey, can one of you come with me for 10 minutes? And they both said, yeah. And then one of them did. And then it was a walk and talk interview. And the other saw that his photographer pal was walking backward through a crowd. So he went over and spotted him. And it's just little things like that. We have a weekly thing. What do we call it, Smitty? Shout out board.
Like bright spots. Yeah.
Bright spots. Yeah, there you go. Okay, yeah.
Where we kind of behind the scenes say, hey, way to go. That's going to be one of my bright spots that Eddie popped up. He was busy. Colin was busy, but he saw, he's got to work his way through a crowd while Ted does an interview. I need to go help him. So it's that. It's, I guess if you want me to think political moments, I'd need a second on that.
That's okay. We don't have to go to political. I just wondered what would stand out to you.
I mean, I had never been in a room where Donald Trump had spoken. Okay. So to hear his acceptance speech and the historical nature of that was really interesting to me. I had never been in a room where Bill Clinton had spoken. And last night I did go way up into the upper rafters of the United Center and kind of weaseled my way into a seat just to be in the room, because I want to, Jimmy Buffett used to say, don't describe the ocean if you haven't seen it, right? I'm a little bit critical of the DNC and how they just didn't find a way to get more journalists in the room so you can describe what was happening, so you can describe the feel. I've been very honest when you've asked me questions like, how did the Wall speech go over? How did the Biden speech go over? I don't know. I was watching on a monitor like you were at home. But for the Clinton speech and the Pelosi speech, I was in there last night so I could gauge the excitement. And Milwaukee did a much better job of that, frankly, because of the layout of the FISERV. And frankly, there were fewer delegates. The RNC does things differently than the DNC. So there were fewer people. And there was more room to be in the bowl at FISERV to take in what was happening.
Is Beyonce going to perform tonight?
Oh, that's the question. We're hearing it all. I saw a colleague from FOX6 in Houston, which is Beyonce's hometown, and asked her and got a very cryptic answer. And I'll just leave it at that. So, I don't know. The place will go nuts if she does. I'm telling you that. They gave a standing ovation to Nancy Pelosi. I can only imagine what they're going to do if Beyonce comes out on stage tonight.
So one more day to go. But before we let you go from this podcast recording on Thursday morning, we're going to take a break and go off the record when we come right back.
What's that?
You'll find out.
I don't want to do that.
And it is time for us to go off the record. So we get a little more casual, have a little fun. Ted's not having fun by answering a question for which we have done no preparation. That is where Ted is. To ask us that question, of course, executive producer Sarah Smith.
So I had a question, which would have been funny for you, Ted, and we could talk about that later. But as I see you sitting in your hotel room, I thought, okay, hotel questions. People are kind of weird in hotels, or I don't know, maybe when you, okay, so then this is me going rogue. My apologies. Do you unpack your clothes and put them in the drawers?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
What?
First thing I do.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Okay, Brian, do you do that?
Well, no.
Hang on. But before I answer what my answer is, my question is, what happens when you end up in a hotel that, because a lot now boutique hotels and that don't have drawers. They might have some shelves, or they might not have.
I'm too poor, Brian. I don't stay in boutique hotels.
Oh, I'm sorry, have I revealed it? I don't travel enough. I stay in cheap boutique hotels that I got through Hotwire, right?
With your Groupon.
Oh, I just probably put out an advertisement. Anyway,
Okay.
So no, but you,
but
so
do
you
you?
unpack right away.
Do you?
I typically live out of the suitcase.
Okay.
Now I will sometimes, if I'm only there for a couple of days, I will pull like, okay, these are the morning clothes I might take, out for a walk or a run.
Okay.
I have this idea. I'm going to go for
Lay
a
it
run.
out.
I don't go, but I think I'm
Vacation
going to go.
runs, yeah.
And then I have the clothes that I might wear out at night, and then that sort of thing. But I don't
Okay.
completely unload into the drawers like I'm staying there.
I do because I'm away from home, and so I don't want to be digging through a suitcase.
Oh, that's
okay?
fair. I'm sure you
So
hang your shirts
within
and stuff
10
like
minutes, I was unpacked.
that. Wow.
The suits were in there. The shirts were up there.
Okay.
Found the ironing board. I ironed the shirts I needed to wear. Got a sock and undies drawer. Got a casual clothes drawer. Got, all laid out. Now, the ironic thing about that is when I get home, that suitcase is going to stay unpacked for about 3 months. Okay. So there's the
It'll be
iron. Like in a
October.
hotel room,
See,
I want it to be very organized.
I will tell you,
Yeah.
When
my
I get
wife.
home,
My wife and I are different on that because she will leave the suitcase and live out of it for a little while or whatever it is. When I get home, I'm immediately in the laundry room putting the stuff in and unpacking thing. I don't know why, but to me, if I let it sit, I won't touch it for a week. So I want it out of there now.
Okay.
How about you? What's your?
I feel, I always think I want to be the person that unloads the suitcase and puts it in the drawers, but I never do. And then usually it's like the last day where I'm like, oh man, I really should have put my jeans in this drawer. I don't know, but I don't. And then I wonder about the people that do that. I don't know. What about when you leave the hotel room and let's say you just need to go to the lobby for something? And maybe you just woke up. Are you wearing like your shorts and a t-shirt, like your jammies down there? Or do you feel the need to, like, do you treat it like your own home? Or do you feel the need to get fully dressed and go down to the lobby?
oh wait, what happened here? Did I lose you a little bit?
No.
We can still hear you.
Can you hear me?
He's
I
avoiding the
can't hear
question.
you.
He is.
He's dodging the
I
question.
can't see you.
What?
Okay. If you
We're
can hear us,
here.
we still see you.
Okay. Oh, there we are. Okay. Yeah, I'm.
Do you go to the lobby in your clothes or your jams?
Yeah, I'm in shorts.
Okay.
Right? Got to go down and get coffee today in my flip flops. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
More than you
so
thought,
this
yeah.
came up because I have in-laws who just went on a trip across Wisconsin, did some biking and other things, and they went to Chippewa Falls, and they like to stay in sort of smaller, out of the way, kind of quaint places or B&Bs, but they stayed at more of a big hotel, convention type hotel. And they said they didn't like it because they wanted to go down to the pool and wear their swimsuits and drip across the floor like you could. They said, but there was like business travelers there in the lobby. And like, I'm not going across in my drippy swimsuit
Schlepping.
and, hopping into the, elevator with people in their business suits. So they felt like that was a little like you got to
No
put
problem
something
doing
on.
that.
Yeah.
I went to the Oak Street Beach is about a half a block away from us. So the other day
Kale's
I
talked
had
about
time
that
and
too.
took a little dip in Lake Michigan and got all sandy and came up in the elevator and they're used to that.
What? You took a swim?
Well, I don't know if it's swimming. I mean,
Oh.
it was like the waves were kind of high, so I sort of
Okay.
body surfed.
So that's Lake Michigan water, right? So that's
I don't know if you guys know the Chicago is on the same lake.
yeah,
as
no.
Milwaukee. I don't know why
Breaking
you're all so
news.
surprised by this.
I'm not surprised. What I
didn't know
was
you
going
were
to
gonna take a
ask is
swim.
you have been on this podcast before to talk about your your ice
bath.
dips, your ice baths, and
Yeah.
like, while it's not exactly icy this time of year, it's still not warm water. Is this sort of a
No,
a
it's
version of an ice
warm.
bath?
It's alarmingly warm.
Oh.
Really?
Lake Michigan is not. It's not a cool dip right now. It's
Okay.
comfortable.
All
Frankly,
right.
a little too comfortable.
What else are you doing when you wake up? Like you said, you're getting ready to go for a
I'm
walk.
trying to
or
get
you
long walks in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a great walk-in city, and my running days are over. So, when I got here that night and unpacked, got everything organized.
unpacked in the drawers. Yeah.
Took a long walk north up the lakeshore, the path that goes along Lake Michigan, and then the next day I walked down to Navy Pier and back. And yesterday I walked to breakfast, and today hopefully get a chance to get a walk in and a breakfast. And it's our time, and it's kind of the time we know we're going to have a long day tonight. We're going to be there very late tonight.
What I hear Ted saying is, "Let me go. I need to
I
get out
want
here and go
to
for a
go."
walk." We're going to take a break and wrap things up. Ted, we need to get you on your walk. We really appreciate, sincerely, the time you've taken this morning, because I know these are long, long days when you're down there and long nights. And then to get up with us for 45 minutes has been fantastic. So thank you so much.
I am happy to do it, and I can't wait to see you guys back at the ranch, and that'll be soon enough.
If you have a topic you would like us to discuss on Open Record or an issue you think we should investigate for Fox 6 News, send us an email to fox6investigators@fox.com. As always, thank you to the people who make this podcast possible, including our executive producer, Sarah Smith, our editor, Dave Machuda, who is also manning the video switcher this week, and of course, our chief photographer, Cale Zimney. With that, I'm Bryan Polcyn. We'll be back next week.